Welcome back to React Native Radio Podcast. Brought to you by me. I'm sending out a big hug to everyone who hears this. Episode 343, Discord's Journey to React Native with Jhin.
Robin, did you say that you've been playing chess lately?
Sort of.
Okay.
So I found out that Duolingo now offers chess as one of its like language, quote unquote language options. So you can learn chess through Duolingo.
Oh, wow.
And I started doing it because that sounded really fun and I love it. I'm not very good yet. But
they're like lessons?
Yeah, they're like little.
Okay.
It's like if you've ever done Duolingo, they're like little bite-sized, just like repetitive, like examples, puzzles, like little lessons. But you're practicing things like checkmating and like exchanging and like all the different sort of chess concepts. And you just kind of do it over and over again in little bite-sized pieces. And then every once in a while, the lesson will be like just a full game, and you like play the person, and it adjusts automatically to your skill level. And it also tracks, like it calculates your ELO every time you do a full match. It's like tells you what your ELO is. I've been really liking it. I find it super, super engaging. And it's the most Duolingo XP that I've like ever done because I just want to like keep playing. Whereas like when I'm doing Spanish or something, I get bored after a few lessons and then I put it down. But I've been really enjoying it.
It's like you do like move my knight to A4 or whatever.
Well,
but in
like
Spanish.
the little guy will just be like, solve the puzzle. And it's like a chess like board, and you have to figure out what the best move is in that configuration.
Okay.
Usually it's like checkmating or like taking their queen or like some like big move like that.
That's a cool concept. Like integrating a game in gamifying, right?
Yeah.
Essentially.
It's
learn
it's
another
made me
game.
like Duolingo more and like chess more. So
There you go. I always say that I'm glad I didn't discover chess until later in life because I think it scratches the same itch that programming does for me. And I don't know, it's harder to make a living with chess. So it's a good hobby.
You
but,
weren't going to be the next Magnus Carlsen?
I'm very unlikely. I'm only half Norwegian. So yeah, I still play chess from time to time. It's usually more like, I play daily games all the time, but that's like you make a move and then, my cousin in Minnesota, a day later might make his move.
It's like Words with Friends, but chess.
Yeah, exactly. It's just kind of correspondence chess.
Yeah.
Which is fun. I enjoy it. And my cousin is determined he's going to beat me to 100 wins, but I think I have like 20 left and he has about 80 left.
Well, maybe when I get enough confidence, I can start playing correspondence chess with you too.
Oh, I'm totally down. Yeah. Chess has been a lot of fun. Even last night I was watching chess YouTube, and wow. I looked at a tournament, like the top 10, finishers from a tournament. And I told my wife, it's kind of sad because I know all of these players. I know all of these players. I've been spending way too much time following like professional chess. Anyway, it's fun. That's cool that Duolingo does that, Anyway, we should probably talk about React Native, though. I do want to ask our guest here, Jhin, Director of Engineering at Discord. First off, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I appreciate having you on. Do you play chess?
Not well. Not at your level, that's for sure.
Nobody's saying anybody here is good at it.
So I'm hoping to change it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know. It's a lot of fun, and it seems to jive well with a lot of what us programmers like. I don't know. Just for some reason, just the puzzles seem to kind of dial in there. Chaz, can you give a little background about yourself?
Of course. So I am the Director of Engineering at Discord for Client Platform. As some of you might know, Discord is primarily a chat app. It's used by a lot of different folks. primarily by gamers, but also a lot of communities use Discord as well to kind of connect. And majority of users are on desktop or mobile. And so those platforms, we use a lot of like cross-platform frameworks and libraries. So our web app is in React. The desktop apps are basically the same React app in an Electron shell onto Windows and Mac and Linux. And then on mobile, we use React Native, hence why I'm here for Android and iOS and some similar platforms. As a result of all of those cross-platform libraries, we have a team, a group of folks at Discord that think a lot about kind of the foundational work, kind of keeping React Native and React up to date. And we also care a lot about performance and quality. We've found that small changes to performance metrics sound so boring, to the feel of the app, right? When the app loads faster, when it feels smoother, it actually has a pretty big impact on user engagement, which then obviously impacts the business. That's Discord, and then I don't know, I'm happy to talk about other stuff too if that's interesting.
Yeah, well, how long have you been doing it? Like feel like you've been coding professionally for a little while now.
Yeah, so I've been fortunate enough to get to work at a couple of different startups over the course of my career, which has been a lot of fun. Started as a software engineer. I studied computer science in college. I started at a data science startup for a few years, so I got to kind of learn some data science, machine learning stuff, like before it was actually AI. Just kind of got lucky, and I ended up joining a company called Cameo pretty early. Oh yeah, they do celebrity video shout-outs, which are a lot of fun. And I joined as one of the first engineers, and then kind of ended up building and growing the team there. And so that was definitely a very interesting ride. We grew very fast. I learned a lot of things the hard way. But we also had a lot of fun. We built some stuff that people really loved. The primary app at Cameo was also a React Native app, and so really all the startups I've been at. I did a few other startups after that. A childcare startup, a climate tech startup, and not intentionally, but all of those actually either had a React Native app or I was working on a React Native app, and so I've kind of had some experience with that through the course of my career, which has been a nice connecting thread. I guess.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, you're in the right place then, React Native Radio. We're glad to have you here. Before we get into our topic, let's talk really quickly about our sponsor, Infinite Red. We are a premier React Native consultancy located fully remote in the US. We're about 33 now, senior plus level React Native consultants and support staff. And we've been doing this for getting very close to a decade. If you are looking for React Native expertise, hit us up at infinite.red/radio. And don't forget to mention that you heard about us through the React Native Radio podcast. All right, let's talk Discord and React Native, because I actually think this story is very interesting. From the very beginning, it seems like that's when Discord went to mobile, React Native was sort of the play, at least initially on iOS. Walk us through that decision to use React Native at Discord.
Of course. Yeah, I think the whole hindsight is 2020. I think for Discord it is really fun to look back because maybe a little bit of luck and a little bit of skill. I think we ended up making a choice that we still really are really happy with. I honestly think at the time was not maybe the obvious choice. So we were pretty early to React Native, and maybe to give, is it okay if I can give a little bit of backstory? This is public knowledge, but Discord originally was not a chat app. It was actually a mobile game studio. And the game was called Fates Forever. And it was this like mobile MOBA, like Dota, League of Legends like game. The founders, loved building games. And so they were building it and the game was doing okay. But what they found was that the feature that people really liked was the in-game chat feature they had built. And also like this like guild coordination feature thing. So then, eventually they pivoted over to that and the rest is history. But from a technical point of view, I think the thing that's fascinating is that the very first version of that chat guild coordination app was a web app, and it was built in React. And this was back in 2014, 15, maybe even earlier. And so this was early React. React had been on the scene for a little while, but I think at the time, at least my memory when I was working then, was Angular was maybe the more popular framework. And React was maybe up and coming, but was certainly not the obvious choice. And so I think we got maybe a little bit of luck, or I think a lot of credit to Stan, our CTO and co-founder. I think a little bit of skill there as well. And so then as we leaned into Discord, the actual chat app, we eventually got to the point where we realized we needed a mobile app because users wanted a mobile app. They wanted to be able to continue chatting, outside their desk, so to speak. And so again, kind of made the choice. Stan actually spent a weekend and kind of just built a prototype in React Native, which at the time, this was early React Native. So I think it had been released maybe a few months prior by Meta. And so it was just on iOS. Android hadn't been released yet. But kind of took the web app and ported it over in a weekend, and it mostly worked. It didn't fully work, but it mostly worked. And it was good enough to be like, you know what, let's do this. And so from day one, we had a React web app, or maybe, day 90 or whatever, React web app, a iOS React Native app, and then an Android, just standard at the time Java app. And so the mobile code base was basically a whole bunch of conditionals that said, if Android, go Java, and if not, go React Native. So that was kind of the start.
The pieces kind of fall into place here. This kind of makes sense why Discord originally appealed more to gamers, I guess. And that's still kind of a big contingent of people.
I'm pretty sure my
Discord
husband was using Discord in like 2014 and 2015 when you were brand new.
Right.
Yeah. He's a
totally.
hardcore gamer.
But it's
and
much
I remember
more
being
than
like,
that
what's
now.
this Discord thing?
Yeah, and it's much more than that now, of course. A lot of companies use it.
We see it a
open
lot
source.
in tech. Yeah. For
Right.
community
Yeah.
chat platforms.
Yeah. I'm building a game and I have my Discord community. And people can jump in and kind of follow along.
The React core team uses Discord for their community chat.
Discord's a big deal. And it's kind of funny to me also that Slack's origin story is kind of similar, where it came out of a game and they needed a way to communicate and and built Slack as a side thing, and that became, of course, much bigger than the game ever did. Yeah, very, very interesting stuff.
I also kind of want to highlight something you said there that I think our listeners, given that you're probably all React Native developers, probably not really surprised by it, but it speaks to React Native a lot. As you said, your CTO and co-founder back in 2015, that time when React Native was still young, spent a weekend to transform an app that is right now very successful over to iOS. That kind of speaks a lot to React Native and its core foundations, right? So back then it was only iOS, and the fact that he was able to do it in a weekend and put together a really well-rounded app. You said some features weren't working, but still, he got it well enough on its point to where it kind of, it kind of like launched you guys into transforming into being a chat app. And that kind of speaks to a good foundation was laid at that point, just over a weekend. So I think that's incredible in its own sense.
Absolutely. And I think that it's a pattern that we've probably all seen a few times, since we've worked on React Native at various places. It really is a very powerful tool to getting they talk about 80-20, maybe even getting beyond the 80%, getting to 85 or 90% or something like that, which is really nice. I will say the last mile has its own very unique challenges, which maybe we can talk about later. But the first half is, I think, a very compelling value prop.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk about that for sure. I guess because it was early on and because it was a CTO doing this, my assumption is that alignment with the rest of the development team went okay, but was there pushback, do you know, or do you think that overall the company was just sort of aligned on, okay, this looks like the right choice from a tech standpoint?
It's funny because I think, again, hindsight's 2020. We're so happy with where we are that I think if you were to ask anyone on the team, hey, how do you feel about the decision? Did you feel like it was a good idea? Everyone now says oh yeah, it was great. I think on the other hand, though, there were very a variety of challenges that we've had to face over the last, I guess, decade now, from a technical point of view, where it probably wasn't always obvious, and I think maybe even the most clear point on that is that we were on React Native and iOS on day one, but we didn't actually port our Android app over to React Native for about 6 years, and we tried the entire time to port it over, right? So it was, we wanted to, even from day one, we had this feeling of, Meta just released React Native on iOS. Android's probably right around the corner. We'll just port it over the second they come around. It'll be just a few months. Like, we'll be fine, right? That was the sentiment at the time. And like, obviously it took 6 years, so it clearly wasn't that easy.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure if you were to ask any individual engineer in 2017, like, how do you feel about this right now? They probably would throw their hands up and be like, why is this not working? But now looking back, the team is, we're pretty happy with it.
What were the biggest, what were the challenges on Android that prevented you from making that leap right away? And then like, what eventually, I know you finally did it in like 2022, I think. What ultimately convinced you that it was like ready enough to make that change?
Yeah. So for us, the spoiler here is that I think the unlock was really Hermes being stable enough and being fully in Android, which was around 2020, 2021, something. It had to stabilize over a few months. So that's the spoiler end answer. But I think at a more bigger picture level, there's probably two things. One of them was that in the early years, there were just some features that were actually missing on Android with React Native, and things like certain kinds of scrolling interactions, certain kind of like edge-to-edge detection, certain other, not push, but there was a few other libraries that kind of just didn't quite work. And I think a lot of those gaps ended up being filled by open source third-party libraries. So not directly by the Meta team, right? But by, libraries like React Navigation or React Native Screens or Reanimated or something like that, right? But those didn't come out immediately, and I think the ecosystem had to mature, I guess. Yeah. So that's one. It's just like there was actually just straight up some features that were missing on Android that were present on iOS. And if you look at the React Native code base from back in like 2016, 17, like I remember there were like conditionals in here, or there was like code comments that would basically just say like, this doesn't work on Android. It just didn't implement it. And it's okay. Like I think it was the right choice for what they needed at the time. Yeah. But there were just things missing we needed. So that's one, just feature gaps that ended up being filled by third-party libraries. And that was part of what helped us. But then the second part, and this is, I think, most related to Hermes, was actually performance. I'm not entirely sure. It's hard to tell exactly why, but there were definitely key parts of our app, as a chat app, being able to scroll through your messages quickly when you have a lot of them, like say, millions of them, or millions of people on a server. And then some of the various like animations that occur. Performance was really hard. And we tried, it was almost like every 6 months from 2015 to 2021, we kept trying to port. We would like spend a month, an engineer would do it spike, and they'd come back and be like, cold start time's 30 seconds. It's like, this is like literally not going to fly.
No. Can't do it. Can't do it.
Our crash rate is 5%, which is 4% higher than Google Play's, bad behavior. Like this is not going to work. And so we were dealing with a lot of performance issues.
Well, and for your use case specifically, you're like scroll performance has to be like on point because the entire content of your app is like long lists.
Yeah, and what got in the way a lot of times, and we'll talk about this later, but the legacy architecture trying to measure like table items, the sizes of them as you're scrolling and be able to accurately predict those things. That wasn't easy. It was actually hard to do with the legacy because it was like the asynchronous communication with the native side. With the new Arc, we have a lot more options. There's a lot more things. And actually, real quick, I know Mazen's got a question. There's 3 articles that we want to point people to. Most notably, the one from this year, Supercharging Discord Mobile. And then there's also from 2022, when you switched from Android native to React Native. And then way back in 2019, talking about the effort to achieve native iOS performance with React Native. And we'll link to those in the show notes. They're very, very interesting and detailed articles about how you did that.
A follow-up to that, Chaz, is how much of your app is built in the native layer versus the JS layer? And, when did you determine to drop to the native to solve your issues? And did that help within your Android? You mentioned performance and all that. Is that how you solved your performance issues along the way?
Yeah, it's a good question. And we definitely have had to leverage kind of this balance between native and JavaScript to get performance on both platforms, Android and iOS. I think the context of the backstory is a little bit helpful here to the next part of the answer, which is that the Android app probably has a little bit more native code because it started in native and like went over to React Native, right? And the iOS maybe has a little bit less. The thing that they really share is that we've wrote about this in some blog posts. We've ended up having to implement a lot of the core chat feature itself, like the actual chat screen, which is the most important screen to us from a user point of view, in native code to get in particular, the scrolling to work really nicely. Especially when you've got a lot of like rich media coming in and you're trying to, be smart about how you're pre-caching things off the screen and floating them in. Generally speaking, it's the chat is what's in native. The other thing, part of the reason that chat's in native as well, is that for the most part, our chat interface doesn't change as much. Like when I say the core chat interface, I mean like where you're actually like DMing someone. That doesn't change as much as some of the other features. And that actually probably gets to another interesting topic, which is that like, one of the things that we've really enjoyed about React Native that's not unique to us, and when I talk to other folks at larger companies with React Native, they say the same thing, but it really has allowed our product engineering team to iterate really quickly and much more quickly than they used to be. And we have this kind of like very not scientifically rigorous A/B test example, which is like we know what it was like when we had to ship features when we were on native Android and prior to 2022, and we know what it's been like after, and the velocity has been significantly higher for being able to test things and figure out, are users interested in these new features, whatever they are, whether it's our new like Quests and Orbs products or whether it's voice filters or things like that. It's a lot faster when our product engineers are able to, for the most part, write code in JavaScript and then have it go to everywhere, web, desktop, and mobile.
Yeah.
I love that. And do you mind if I take a quick second to kind of rant? I'm not going to rant, but I'm going to issue. I know Robin knows me too well. I'm going to issue a challenge to our audience, React Native developers out there. Too many of you are scared of native code. Too many of you, and that needs to change. This is React Native. We do work with native code. Discord shows how it can be done. They do it well. They know when to drop into native code. Now, as time goes on, Chaz, I think you'd agree with me, you have to do it less and less, right? Like there's more opportunities to use React Native itself. But for core experiences, exactly what you just said, for things that are super critical, obviously try to do it in React Native, because if you can get away with that, obviously there's the speed of deploying it. There's the fact that it's one code base. It's all in TypeScript. You can kind of roll with it. But don't be afraid of dropping into native. I'll say this as long as I need to. The core platform is ours. Like, we are running in a React Native app, but we're running on a native app too. We have the native app. We have the native platform. We have the native languages. We have things like turbo modules, expo modules, and nitro modules that allow us to drop down. And if you want to, you can always build right on JSI. Like, anybody can build these things. React Native itself, the views that it renders are native views. They're no different than the ones you might write, obviously. And reading especially this latest blog article talking about like the emoji picker. I mean, this is actually very difficult to achieve in React Native. You could maybe do it. Maybe there's some ways you could make that happen. But if you already had one working in native, or you knew how to achieve it in native and you knew that you could do that on just by dropping down into a native component, mount it right up. In fact, I don't know if people know this, but obviously you can mount native components, UI components right into a React Native app. You can also pass them children, which are React Native, and have them mount inside of there. And then those can mount native components. You can
Inception
mix
style.
and match.
It is
Yeah, you can
a
mix and
little
match
bit.
however you need to.
Native Inception.
That's right. React Native really is like an orchestration layer for all these different renderers and all of these different ways of doing things. I actually talked to Jordan Walk about this concept not long ago. One of the creators of course, the creator of React and one of the creators of React Native. And he said, yeah, that's how it's designed to work. Like, it's basically the building blocks, the things that you build are then composable into an app. And some of those building blocks could be things that are like a list view that you really couldn't achieve the performance you needed, using React Native for whatever reason. Of course, now we have better options because of Flash List 2 and Legend List and a bunch of other things. But, and I know internally Discord has some interesting list items, list components that they've built over the years. But anyway, that's my rant. It's also my challenge to the listeners that, hey, I want you all, this is your assignment, go out and build either an Expo module, like start there. It's probably the easiest, or Turbo module or Nitro module. Like go build something like that and render it in your app and get used to this feeling of like, I'm in control. I don't have to only rely on what everybody else builds for me. I can build this stuff at any layer on the stack that we have.
It's funny if you like exactly the situation that Chaz described, what Discord has done, utilizing native where it makes sense to get the best like UI experience. If you go into like Hacker News, Reddit, like the internet will tell you that that's a failing of React Native, that like these are things that React Native can't do. When it's like, it's really the opposite. Like that's React Native superpower. These are things that React Native can do because you can utilize native when you need to. Like, I think that's a huge win, and it's a huge strength of React Native.
I think I'll plus one that, and actually to kind of add a second data point, this dropping into native where needed, whether it's for performance or for something else, is something that's been very valuable for us at Discord and very powerful. I also saw it at Cameo as well. We did the same thing where probably at the time, Cameo had somewhere like north of 50 or 60 product engineers, and we had a small mobile team of maybe 2 or 3 folks that was just focusing on kind of bringing some of the UI flows that were most important or needed performance most into native. So at the time for Cameo, that was mostly like the video and things like that. And I think that it's so first off, definitely plus one to Jamin that like would definitely encourage everyone to try dropping in. It seems scarier than it is. Like once you do it, it's really not that bad. It actually
it's just coding. Like you probably you're good enough already. You can figure it out.
Exactly. And if not, some AI code assistant could probably help you. But seriously, like I think the frameworks like turbo modules and things like that actually do make it a lot easier. And make it safer where you're not having to like stare at Xcode and be like, why is this not building? Like it does actually help you.
Right.
But also, and Jamin, you were kind of speaking a lot to the developers. I'm going to sort of speak to the, I don't know, not the developers, but I guess the engineering managers out there or whatnot. Is that from an organizational leadership point of view, it's from a business point of view, actually, maybe I'll just speak to the business people out there. It's very valuable because the business ROI is really great. You can, what maybe would normally take, let's say, 100 native engineers, 2 teams, like 50 iOS engineers and 50 Android engineers, you can actually build the same thing with 30 or 40 React Native engineers, and then they just need support from a few folks who are excited to dive into native. And that could be that group itself too, right? But you're able to move so much faster because you're not waiting for like, oh, well, the Android isn't ready for release, so we're going to have to hold up the entire thing for 2 more weeks until they're both finished with this new feature, right? You can just kind of ship once. And speaking for myself, I think I've seen that be incredibly valuable at Discord and also at Cameo.
Awesome. I kind of have a question kind of specific to your code base, and I think some of our listeners would appreciate knowing this too. What's your primary stack? What packages do you use that you can kind of talk about? Because you mentioned earlier how the community really helped you all patch up some holes within Android and all that. What are some packages do you use? Do you use Expo? I think that's probably a big one.
So we don't use Expo. I'm not entirely sure if we predate Expo. I'm like pretty sure we predated Expo.
Yeah.
I feel like they didn't get around to it until 2017, 18.
That's a good reason to not have used
it. Their team is great, to be very clear. I think Expo is great. I've used it a bunch for personal projects and whatnot. But we just kind of predated it. And so a lot of the things that Expo kind of gives, we had already built at that point. So that's definitely one of the big technology callouts. I think otherwise, some of the things we use are actually probably fairly well known. And so just kind of a plus one that they're useful. So for the most part, with TypeScript, in terms of state management, we use Flux. And then some of the big libraries that I think help a lot are things like reanimated, React Native screens, React Native Skia. We've tried every version of List and then some. We actually, they're like all in our code base, and sometimes we like flip between them to see like, do we want to try Legend List again, or do we want to try Flash List V2 now, or whatnot. So I think those are probably some of the big ones in terms of third-party libraries.
Cool. What about like infrastructure for release? Do you all do internal builds? How do you manage like getting it all the way to the stores?
Yeah, we have built our own release pipeline, which my team manages.
When your Discord, you could do that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's again, I think maybe had we started later, maybe we would have leveraged some whether it's Expo or something else that was existing. But
right, you were kind of pioneers in the wild west.
Oh, yeah.
Like building your own wagons, like
yeah, and also I think maybe to credit where credit's due, right? We haven't purely been building in an ivory tower, so to speak, right? You know, we kind of see what some other folks are doing, and we're like, oh, that feature would be very useful for us. And whether that's kind of easier ways to OTA or different ways to think about rollbacks or different ways to deal with some of the sometimes flaky APIs from the mobile app stores, things like that. You know, we try to take ideas when people do them all.
We don't have a ton of time left, but I want to make sure to hit on this before we wrap up. We've the new architecture, or I guess now we're calling it the architecture, as opposed to the legacy architecture, has been on a lot of people's minds lately. We've had Meta on to talk about it pretty recently. So for our audience's sake, I would love to hear about how the new architecture transition, what that looked like for Discord, and how that went for such a like complex and like historic app. Like you've been around a long time at the time that you were starting to do this. Like, so how hard was that? What were the sort of obstacles that you ran into?
So I'm going to preface this by saying the Meta team's been very helpful, and we're very appreciative for all the help and support they've given us. And also, it has been really hard, like really hard. It feels similar to the Android migration. We were in stand-up yesterday, and I was like trying to look for stand-up notes or something, and I accidentally pulled up stand-up notes from October 2022, and the stand-up notes looked identical to the ones from my stand-up notes today, which basically said Android new arc ? iOS new arc ? And we were still thinking about it 2-3 years ago. Some exciting news. We are in the middle of hopefully shipping Android new arc to Android to 100% today. We've been in beta testing for the last 8 to 10 weeks.
Woohoo!
And we're very excited.
Awesome.
We are, I don't want to jinx it, but we're tentatively seeing some performance gains, particularly some wins on CPU improvements, which matter to us, but most importantly, some improvements to what we call jank or dropped frames. Basically, we're seeing some dramatic improvements to that, probably from the new renderer, but maybe also a couple of the other technologies as well. So we're pretty excited about that. But yeah, in a nutshell, it's been really difficult. And I think the thing that's been particularly hard for us, because I don't want to scare people off who maybe haven't made the migration yet, the first part of the migration was relatively easy. Like getting a working build with the new arc flag flipped on, honestly wasn't that bad. It took a couple weeks of an engineer and it like kind of mostly worked. But the long tail was tough for us. And, you know, I think for better and for worse, but probably for better, at this point, we've got pretty high performance standards that we set for ourselves because we have done some testing that we know what the business impact is. Even a 5% regression on memory or a 1% regression on crashes, like it impacts the business and we see that. And so
Huge deal. Yeah.
Took us a long time to burn down the long tail of little things, little crashes, out of memory errors that were hiding other crashes. And then a lot of what I would just call like UI discrepancies. They weren't crashes, but they just didn't look quite right. You would scroll and it would flicker somewhere, or something would pop in a little bit late, or like it would take a little bit longer to connect to the voice call than we're used to, and we weren't sure why. And there was no bug. That one was actually interesting. There's just the current new architecture, right, by being more multi-threaded, so to speak, allowed more things to happen, which then actually ironically slowed things down. And so we kind of dealing with some of those trade-offs took us a very long time, but fingers crossed, we're almost there.
It's really cool. I think it's really cool that you know your app so intimately that you can like pick up on these like microscopic little like, oh, there's a little extra jank here. Like, I love that you're working with that amount of precision. I'm sure it leads to a really good UI.
We have very passionate users. And I think
you'll hear.
It's actually really awesome. I think one of the things that's been really cool for us is we have a very substantial beta tester group like opt-in of just users who just are passionate about it. And
I mean, your user base is a bunch of nerds. Let's be
It's true.
Yeah, a bunch of very passionate nerds. But I mean,
real. Very passionate nerds.
like our Android beta tester group is like 1 million plus people, and so when we ship something to beta, like
they'll tell you.
They'll
tell you
get
what's wrong.
reports. And we're on like a weekly release cadence, so we'll ship to beta on Monday, and by like Monday night, Tuesday morning, we will have like 15 reports already of like little things.
That's so valuable. Like that's awesome.
Wait, does this mean you don't even have to have QA? You just ship it and then wait for
your users will tell you what's wrong.
Well, so the other thing too is, conveniently enough, right? We use Discord to build Discord, so to speak.
Sure.
So we use it as our internal app, and so staff is all on our Canary build. And that gets shipped immediately. And so if an engineer ships something to production that breaks voice, like basically crashes
Everybody knows it.
Everyone knows immediately.
I mean, I'm assuming you guys at Discord use Discord to communicate.
Yes.
That's
That's another inception right there. Discord to Discord.
It's pretty cool when your product is actually something that's like very useful to a technical team and you can dog food it pretty heavily.
Absolutely. So last question, because we do have to wrap up here, but we've talked a little bit, offline about Discord getting more involved in the community, whether it's contributing to open source or just kind of sharing their knowledge and your expertise, your experience. It's very valuable, honestly. There's so much that you've figured out over the years that is super awesome. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's something that we are really excited to lean into, I think, in the coming forever, but I'll say coming months and years. I think, we've obviously, we're very thankful to the open source community. It's helped us get where we are, right? You build on you stand on the shoulders of others or whatever. And we've got some things like our blog posts where we try to get back, and there's a few open source packages that we've kind of open sourced, but we want to lean into more. I think especially as we've gained more confidence as a team, right? As we've learned more and as our engineers have grown and really become experts in their own right, which has been really awesome to see. We're interested in kind of giving back more. And so I'm hoping you'll hear from more of the team over the coming months and years at conferences and things like that. So
perfect. Speaking of conferences, hopefully we can get you to Chain React next year. Our conference, of course, in Portland, Oregon. Would love to see some Discord representation there. It'd be a lot of fun.
Maybe even give a talk or two.
I know. Yeah, let's definitely keep in touch about that. As we end here, and thanks so much, Chaz. Really appreciate you coming on. This was just absolutely packed with great information. As we end here, I do want to shout out Mazen's new YouTube show, React Native Mornings. Mazen, can you give a quick little rundown of what you've been doing over there?
Yeah, so we've done 3 episodes so far. The first 2 actually had Robin on. We celebrated React Native turning 10, and then we did some performance discussions, I'd say. Performance is really hard to do in just out of thin air kind of thing, right? Unless you have a client's app that you want to fix, which we can't do most of the time. I had on 2 engineers, an engineer and a co-founder from Maestro in the last live episode, which was mainly about testing, end-to-end testing, and that went really well, I think.
Yeah.
And actually, I am going to be on with Gabrielle Donadel from Expo. In probably by the time this airs, it will already be out, but it's early September is the episode, and we'll be actually releasing the new SDK, Expo SDK 54.
That's
it's
awesome.
in beta
live.
But we will be the release will happen kind of in tandem with our show.
You're live.
Oh, that's awesome.
Really cool.
Yeah, we'll go live once it goes live, sort of thing. So there's that. And yeah, we have other ideas of some stuff that we'll do down the line. Maybe, stuff where, people like Chaz or Discord or other companies that kind of want to come on and we kind of talk and kind of go through some different product and stuff like that. But kind of using it as a platform to celebrate React Native and what we all love to do.
Awesome.
Go subscribe to React Native Mornings on YouTube and you'll get notifications about scheduled streams.
Perfect. All right. Well, that's all we have for today. We'll see you all next time.
As always, thanks to our editor, Todd Worth, our assistant editor, Jed Bartosky, our marketing and episode release coordinator, Justin Husky, and our guest coordinator, Mazen Chami. Our producers and hosts are Jamin Holmgren, Robin Hines, and Mazen Chami. Thanks to our sponsor, Infinite Red. Check us out at infinite.red/radio. A special thanks to all of you listening today. Make sure to subscribe to React Native Radio on all the major podcasting platforms.